Good morning and welcome to Module 8. The title of this module is Evaluating Communications. And again, very important module, and look forward to covering a few key aspects of this with you today. First of all, our assignment for Module 8 is a discussion. That's the only assignment for this week, and it deals with measuring how we can and should measure organizational communication strategies. And so I'll be discussing some of that with you here today in this video. Being able to measure communications, both individually and organizationally, is very important. And it might strike you as odd that I say measuring individual communications. Oftentimes we don't think about that, but we do. We don't necessarily send out surveys, and we don't necessarily do formal evaluations, but we're constantly evaluating our individual communications with people. We're looking at their reactions, we're looking at facial expressions, we're looking at the tone of their voice, body language, nonverbal cues, any number of things to determine whether our communication is effective and that we're communicating what we would desire. The same holds true for organizations. We all organizationally are looking for those same type of cues. So while those cues are different, they might be more formal, and we might use more formal processes to evaluate them. There are many similarities. Also, looking at how you craft an effective message is first and foremost having the tools to craft and evaluate those messages. So the tools that we've been looking at through the course of this class have been, typing, writing, being able to verbally communicate. Again, as I've noted in the past, it doesn't matter what we have up here if we can't communicate it effectively through the written and or verbal. It really sometimes can be a little bit wasted if we're not able to do that. So we've got to have the tools of communication. And getting the right communication and strategy for communication is itself a process. And one of the first things that we have to determine is, what are the goals of our communication? Now let's think a little bit about what we've been studying during the course of this module is the company research and motion. We've looked at all of the issues that company is facing right now, and so we've been forced to kind of think about, through the course of our assignments, what are the goals of their communication? What do they need to accomplish to move their company beyond this challenge and forward as an organization? So thinking about what those goals are, and also thinking about, if they don't do this right, they're going to have some severe problems going forward. So in terms of what we need to accomplish with our goals on a communication strategy, what are some of those goals? Well, there are a few different ones. First of all, we need to look at who are our stakeholders. And with each stakeholder group, whether it be internal, external, the owners of the company, the media, communities that we reside in, there may be different goals for each different stakeholder set. That's not unusual at all. The second thing we got to look at is, what are the stakes of our communications that we're going to be doing? Most of our communications, whether individually or organizationally, are fairly routine. They're just the common things that we do in the course of business, and the stakes aren't real huge. Again, taking the example of research and motion, they've got a lot on the line in this particular environment at this particular time. The very survival of the organization could be at stake. And I don't think we're being overly dramatic when we say that. And if you think about the issues that we're facing with the pandemic, there are a lot of organizations out there, their survival is at stake right now. And so their communication strategies are going to be very important. You know, how safe can they keep people if they choose to venture out and come to their environment? What are they doing to keep people safe? What are they doing to keep this consistent as they go forward? And then the next thing is, how do we measure our communications effectively? What is the noticeable impact on individuals, on the organization itself, on our external and internal stakeholders? And what is the feedback from our communications? And then what tools do we have to measure that impact? We have a few different ones: listening and observing, just normal feedback channels, seeing what we're picking up, just listening and observing people in the organization itself, our external stakeholders. Stakeholder feedback, some of this you won't have to listen and observe for. People will actually give you feedback. Some of it could be positive, some negative, some very pointed, some even hostile at times, or really intense. And then we have also formal surveys. Again, these could be formal surveys that we do professionally. It could be informal surveys, SurveyMonkey, just any of the number of easily done, rather unscientific surveys that are out there that could at least give you additional information to measure the impact of your communication. And then also be aware throughout all of this process, throughout all of these strategies, you may determine partway through, or maybe even towards the end, that you have failed to target a segment or audience that needed to be targeted or paid attention to. And so if this is the case, it may be necessary for you to take a step back and readjust your strategies based on this new information and observations. Concluding, one of the things I would like to highlight, there's an old saying in marketing: if you can't measure it, don't do it. There's a lot of truth to that. I think the same could very easily be said about your messaging and your messaging strategies. If you can't measure it, step back and consider whether you want to do it or not. And there's never been a better time, there's never been more tools available to measure the impact of our messaging and our communication strategies. Again, from Facebook, survey instruments, there's any number of tools that are out there to try to get more information on the impact that our messaging strategies are having. So as you're looking at your discussion board posts for this week, that's part of the assignment, is thinking about how would you measure communication strategies. So be thinking about some of the ways and kind of cussing and discussing back and forth with your cohort on how you can effectively measure your communication strategies for an organization. And again, you might also be thinking about how this impacts you and how this applies to you individually. We all, our careers, many of our social relationships, maybe even our family relationships, many times are impacted and live and die off of how effective we are at communicating. So how can we think about the feedback loops and how we more effectively measure the impact of our communications, not only organizationally, but individually? Well, that's all I've got for today. I hope everybody's staying safe. And as we come into the end of this class, we're on week 8 now, we've got week 9 and 10 ahead of us. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask me for any assistance I can provide as we come into the end of our modules. And I have had quite a few students do that, and I'm more than happy. I hope you're finding out that I respond fairly quickly. I try to get a turnaround of at least 24 hours. But you know, every once in a while, if I'm a little bit late on that, don't hesitate to jog me again if you need to. Okay. All right. Well, look forward to reading your discussion board posts for this next week, and I'm working on grading your Module 7 assignments, and hopefully have those done in the next couple of days. So thank you, and have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.